Hey everyone, before we start the show, I just want to get some plugs out of the way. If you enjoy this podcast and you're into wrestling, check out the Nerds and Marks podcast or Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling. If you're not getting your fill on movie and entertainment discussion, then check out the Entertainment Buffet podcast. If you want to dive into the world of video games, I highly recommend the Darkcast by my friends over at darkstation.com. Listen to them cover important topics and interview men and women from all over the industry. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to today's shelved mini episode. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. Now we got a couple things to talk about today. First is going to be what is Friday's episode. Now Friday's episode is not going to be covering a movie script. Instead, it's going to be something a little different. I've mentioned in the past wanting to do different types of things like movie commentaries and pitch movie ideas and things like that. Well, this week is going to be the first one of those because this Friday, I sat my wife down who has never seen Star Wars. Now, she's seen Episode 7 and Rogue One because she went with me to the theater, but she kind of slept through them because she's never seen Star Wars. She doesn't have a lot of context for Star Wars, so she was just going for me. And it's one of those things. We've been together for 10 years and I would bring it up every now and then, like, hey, we watch Star Wars, as a lot of people do. But she had just never seen it. Just one of those things. She grew up her father was a Star Trek fan, so she saw a lot of Star Trek and never saw Star Wars. But this week we sat down. I guess the recording was like a couple weeks ago, but the episode that goes up this week, we sat down and we watched episode 4 for her first time and recorded an audio commentary track for it. So what will follow will be her first live reactions, that's the word I'm looking for, to Star Wars. And I think it's really interesting. I know a lot of people probably don't get this experience, so I thought it would be fun to share someone like an outsider's perspective on Star Wars. And we just kind of talk through the movie as she watches it, as she asks questions so I can inform her of things. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And we are going to do, currently as it stands, we are going to do Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. We will most likely not touch the prequels because why would we? I gave her the option. If she wants to do the prequels, we will take a look at them, but I'm not expecting to go near those. Just putting her through the 3 is enough, I think. And honestly, the only opinion I think anybody would really care about. I mean, if there was a large outcry for make her watch the prequels, then, maybe we'll do it. So that's going to be Friday's episode. So that's going to be exciting. And the rest of this episode I'm going to dedicate to a little review for a movie called Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, originally, I wasn't going to be seeing this movie this weekend, but the wife was kind enough to be like, hey, do you want to go see Spider-Man? I was like, yeah, let's go see Spider-Man. So we went and saw Spider-Man, and I came out of the movie conflicted. And I'm going to say this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. It's kind of hard for me to talk about it without listing spoilers, but if you want to hear my thoughts without spoilers, I'll give you just a real brief. I really liked it. I didn't love it. To me, it's like a 4 out of 5. And now we're going to talk spoilers and get into why I feel that way. Now, right out of the gate, I'm going to be a little more harsh just because I am a mega Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man is my all-time favorite superhero. Spider-Man 2 is still my all-time favorite comic book movie, and that stands true today. I know everybody's saying this is the best, most definitive Spider-Man film, and I think in a lot of ways that's correct, but in some ways it's not. The ways it is correct, Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man. I was not sold on him in Civil War. This movie sold me on him because in this one he actually gets to flex his acting muscles and show what he's got, and he's really great. He's great as Spider-Man. He's great as Peter Parker. He's the best of both worlds, which I think Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were both good for their movies, but they faltered at one or the other. Like I've always said that Tobey Maguire was a better Spider-Man, while Andrew Garfield was a better Peter Parker. But Tom Holland's both, and he's really great in the movie. The whole high school aspect is played very well. It definitely feels like Ultimate Spider-Man, which is the best version of Spider-Man in the comics, in my opinion. So that stuff was really great. I really like all that. Things I didn't like. I don't like how much technology is in the suit, because it's kind of like, I understand I feel like a lot of this comes from, obviously he was brought in by Tony Stark for Civil War. And so naturally his connection to everything is Tony Stark. And the bigger thought is, hey, the next time we're going to see Spider-Man is going to be in Avengers Infinity War, when he's going to be battling Thanos or creatures from space. So he needs to have something to kind of stand up to those guys. But it kind of holds back this film, I believe, just because the nature of Spider-Man is he's a poor kid from Queens, and he does the best he can with what he has, and giving him this suit full of technology kind of fights against that. And it was fine for this movie and this world that we've created, and we've seen Spider-Man be broke and busted for 2 different series now, but it's just against what Spider-Man is in the beginning, especially when you're doing an early Spider-Man at the beginning of his career. Because in this, he doesn't do a whole lot of Spider-Man action. Like, we see him on the streets once, and the scenes with the Vulture, which are great, but he doesn't do a whole lot. And then there's the scene on the ferry, of course. It was enough. There was obviously some really good action. I think a lot of it was in the trailer with the ferry scene, which I was kind of hoping that scene would kind of be akin to the train scene in Spider-Man 2, and it's definitely what they're going for, but I don't feel it's as powerful as that scene. Just for some reason, I just think the train scene is played better and makes him more heroic. But I do like that one thing they do in this movie is Spider-Man fails a lot, and it's kind of very similar to Ultimate Spider-Man, where he manages to scrape by just barely and manages to succeed despite him, like in spite of himself. And that's kind of how this movie wraps up too. Like, he defeats the Vulture, without actually defeating the Vulture, which I'll get to that in a second. I'm trying to think what else I want to cover. There were some characterizations of some of the characters from the comics that were changed for the movie that I just didn't understand, such as like Flash and MJ. And I don't buy these characters as, are they just going to completely change them? Like, is MJ going to be an actress? Because this girl doesn't seem like she'd be interested in that at all. Flash was a jock in the comics, and in this, he's not like a fellow nerd, because they go out of your way to say that, like, because he's on the decathlon team with Peter, and they go out of their way to say, like, he couldn't answer a single question, blah, blah, blah. He's like a shitty DJ at the house party. And I don't know, I don't picture a kid in a school like that being a popular kid. I mean, maybe because they have money, because he's driving his dad's BMW or something. But it didn't feel true to who Flash was in the comics. But I mean, those are minor nitpicks. They aren't anything that hurt the movie. It's just like, as a Spider-Man purist, it's just like, this isn't what I saw, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, whatever. Those are things I just have to get over. There's no Harry Osborn, nothing like that. His buddy Ned is just ripped out of the comics from Miles Morales. Another thing that kind of bothered me is Donald Glover. I felt like his performance, he kind of wasn't trying. Like, he was very deadpan in a lot of his delivery. And maybe that was a cue from the director, because I know he's a fantastic actor with a lot of personality, but it just seemed something about him seemed a little off. Maybe it'll seem better in a rewatch. And this is a movie I think will get better the more I watch it, because I even came out of Civil War with kind of some similar feelings, and then now Civil War is one of my favorite Marvel movies just because I've seen it more times. But I don't think it'll ever be better than Spider-Man 2 in my opinion, but I do think I will like it more in the future. But there are definitely some nice Easter eggs. Like Donald Glover actually plays the Prowler and mentions having a nephew, which is Miles Morales. So there's some fun stuff with that. Another thing I didn't really care for, honestly, is Tony Stark. And so Tony Stark is heavily featured in the advertising for this movie, but he has maybe 5 minutes of screen time at best. I'll give him 7 minutes, but it's more a Happy Hogan, Jon Favreau's character. It's more the Spider-Man Happy Hogan movie, and I love Jon Favreau. I love him in that role, and I thought he was a lot of fun in this movie, but it definitely feels deceptive of like, hey, let's throw Iron Man in there to boost the box office for this movie because Iron Man is so popular, but I don't think the movie needed it. I honestly think the Tony Stark stuff holds the movie back. I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is trying very hard. He's kind of putting in the bare minimum Tony Starkness that he needs to, and it's fine, but it definitely doesn't feel like coming off the last time we saw him with Civil War where everybody brought their A game. This one, it just didn't feel as such, and I wish that stuff wasn't even in the movie. I wish the story was written a little differently so we didn't need that stuff. I didn't really care for it. But I guess those are kind of all the things I don't really like about the movie, so why don't we go into the thing I like the most about the movie, which is Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton steals the show, and it's always been a big complaint that Marvel never has any memorable villains. He's the best one since Loki. So I say there's only 3 Marvel villains that I think have ever really mattered, and that's Loki, the Vulture, and then the guy Zemo from Civil War. The first time I saw Civil War, I thought he was a completely useless villain, but on repeated viewings, I think he's one of the best villains because, for one, he actually defeats the Avengers by, he kind of operates behind the scenes, and honestly, it's a more effective way. Like in Jaws, don't show the shark as much. Like, hey, don't show the villain as much. But when you realize what he's accomplished, it's kind of amazing. And also, he was just like a really great actor. But Michael Keaton is like the number 2, maybe even the number 1 villain in Marvel movies. And the fact that they keep him around at the end of the movie, he could come back in some way, shape, or form. Which, I mean, they've gotta do Sinister 6 at some point. I feel like Sony's just itching to get that in there, and Marvel's more than happy to help them get there. It'll just be a while, it'll be further down the road once Tom Holland's a little older. I could see that as like the 3rd or 4th movie. But overall, I really like the movie. The Michael Keaton is definitely my favorite part. They have a show stealing scene where they're in the car and he deduces that Peter is Spider-Man so the twist of Michael Keaton being Liz's dad is I definitely read it somewhere that like that had kind of slipped out there a little bit, but by the time I saw the movie, completely forgot about it. And I remember like when it happened, so we get this big montage of Peter getting ready for the homecoming dance to go with Liz, and it's all exciting. And then he goes over to his house, rings the doorbell, and who opens the door but Michael Keaton because he's her dad. It was legitimately a great twist because the movie just completely takes your mind off the villains for a good 10 minutes because, Peter gets his suit taken away by Tony Stark because of the fairy thing. And you're just not thinking about the Spider-Man stuff. You're just watching him be a kid. And all of a sudden he opens the door and there's his villain right there face to face. And he knows, but the Vulture doesn't know. And then you watch Vulture figure out that he's Spider-Man while they're in the car. And then when they get to the dance, he sends her in. He's like, yeah, we need to have the dad talk or whatever. And then it's just like, does she know or whatever? And that whole conversation is incredible. It is the best part of the movie, and it's a part where there's not even any action. And It was amazing. Like, that scene alone is worth going to see the movie. But no, it's a good movie. I have a few problems with it. It's not the ultimate Spider-Man movie I was kind of led to believe it was, but I never really expected it to be that, like, going in. I expected it to be really good. It slightly missed my expectations, but it's still a fun movie, and I do think I will like it more on future viewings. But that's all I gotta say about Spider-Man: Homecoming. Like I said, 4 out of 5. None of my complaints really are enough to make it a bad movie. I mean, Marvel hasn't really made a bad one yet. Maybe Thor, but even that's not terrible. But yeah, that's all I got for today's episode. So, Star Wars commentary this Friday, and that was my review for Spider-Man: Homecoming. I want to thank everybody for listening to today's mini episode. We definitely need some more iTunes reviews. I'd like to read those on the show. Haven't gotten one in a while, so I know people are listening. I actually had a big jump in downloads this weekend when I was checking the download for my Spider-Man episode, which if you haven't listened to that, be sure to go listen to it. Yeah, no new iTunes reviews, guys. So get on that. Leave some iTunes reviews. We really appreciate it. You can do it right off your phone. Just in your podcast app, search for Shelved and click write a review. It's super easy. It takes 10 seconds. You can even just leave a rating. Just leave a 5-star rating, and even that'll be enough. But I'd appreciate that. And if you want to be more involved with the show, you can actually email us at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. Send in any kind of discussion you want, and we'll talk about it. Any questions, any comments you have, maybe if you don't agree with my Spider-Man review, feel free to write in and let me know. And, we'll do point, counterpoint, and talk about it and all that. That would be fun. So that's all I got for today's episode. Thank you for listening. Be sure to check out this week's commentary track for Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Give us a reason to come back and do Empire Strikes Back. And we do set it up so if you want to follow along with the movie, you can. We give you a starting point on our Blu-ray. So if you want to follow along, you can, or if you just want to listen, because I know most Star Wars fans know the movie well enough, they don't even need to watch it. But yeah, just be sure to check that out. And there's going to be more of those coming in the future, so I want to thank everybody for listening. Be sure to rate and review on iTunes. Send in those emails. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram, @Shelved Podcast. And thank you for listening.